Global communication depends on infrastructure most people never see. Thousands of satellites orbit Earth, carrying internet traffic, navigation signals, financial timing data, military communications, weather monitoring, and emergency response systems. This orbital network has become part of the foundation of modern civilization. But the environment surrounding these systems is becoming increasingly unstable. One major collision in low Earth orbit could trigger a chain reaction capable of disabling critical satellite networks on a global scale. Low Earth orbit is no longer empty space. It is a dense operational zone filled with active satellites, inactive spacecraft, spent rocket stages, and millions of debris fragments. Many of these objects travel at speeds exceeding 17,000 miles per hour. At those velocities, even a small fragment carries enormous kinetic energy. A paint chip can puncture shielding. A bolt can destroy a satellite. A larger collision can generate thousands of additional fragments instantly. This is the basis of what scientists call the Kessler syndrome. The concept was proposed in 1978 by NASA scientist Donald Kessler. It describes a cascading collision process in orbit. One impact produces debris. That debris increases the probability of further impacts. Each new collision creates even more debris, accelerating the cycle. Over time, parts of Earth's orbit could become so dangerous that satellites can no longer operate safely within them. The danger is not theoretical. Space agencies already track more than 30,000 large debris objects orbiting Earth. Millions of smaller fragments remain too small to monitor individually. Despite their size, these objects still pose a serious threat because orbital velocity multiplies impact force dramatically. Satellite operators now perform collision avoidance maneuvers routinely to prevent impacts with known debris. The frequency of these maneuvers continues to increase as orbital congestion grows. The modern internet depends heavily on space-based systems. Global communications are no longer routed exclusively through undersea cables and ground infrastructure. Satellite internet constellations now provide broadband access across remote regions, oceans, and conflict zones. Military operations rely on orbital communication systems for coordination and intelligence sharing. Aviation and shipping depend on satellite navigation continuously. Financial institutions use satellite timing systems to synchronize transactions globally. The orbital layer of the internet has become deeply integrated into everyday life. A large-scale collision event would not disable all internet systems instantly, but it could severely disrupt critical parts of the global communications architecture. The first effects would likely appear in satellite internet services, GPS reliability, military communications, and Earth observation systems. As debris density increased, launching replacement satellites would become significantly more dangerous. Insurance costs would rise sharply. Orbital launch windows could narrow. Some orbital pathways might become temporarily unusable. The most dangerous scenario involves a collision between large objects already in orbit. A defunct satellite colliding with another spacecraft at orbital velocity could generate a massive debris field. Those fragments would spread across multiple orbital paths. Because objects in orbit move at different angles and speeds, the debris cloud would not remain localized. It would intersect with other satellite routes repeatedly over time, multiplying the probability of additional collisions. Several events have already demonstrated how rapidly debris populations can increase. In 2007, China destroyed one of its own satellites during an anti-satellite weapons test, generating thousands of trackable debris fragments. In 2009, an inactive Russian satellite collided with an operational American communications satellite. That single collision created another major debris cloud. Many fragments from both events remain in orbit today. The expansion of satellite mega-constellations has added another layer of complexity. Companies are launching thousands of satellites to provide global internet coverage. These systems improve connectivity, but also increase orbital density dramatically. The more objects placed into shared orbital regions, the greater the probability of collision over time. Space traffic management is becoming one of the most important technical challenges of the modern era. Tracking systems have improved significantly, but they are not perfect. Ground-based radar and optical sensors monitor larger debris objects continuously. Operators receive warnings when potential close approaches are detected. Satellites can often maneuver to avoid impact. However, smaller fragments frequently remain invisible until collision occurs. The tracking problem becomes harder as the number of objects increases. The issue is also geopolitical. Space is now critical infrastructure. Governments increasingly view orbital systems as strategic assets tied directly to national security and economic stability. Satellite networks support surveillance, missile warning systems, communications, navigation, and intelligence gathering. As dependence grows, orbital disruption becomes a serious strategic threat. Any major collision event would have consequences far beyond commercial internet access. Attempts are underway to reduce long-term risk. New satellite designs increasingly include deorbit systems intended to remove spacecraft from orbit at the end of operational life. Some companies are developing debris removal technologies, including robotic capture systems and drag-based devices designed to accelerate atmospheric re-entry. International organizations are also discussing updated rules for orbital operations and debris mitigation. Despite these efforts, enforcement remains limited. Space law was developed during an era with far fewer satellites and significantly lower orbital congestion. Today, commercial operators, governments, and private launch companies all share the same orbital environment. Coordinating standards across multiple nations and industries remains difficult. No single authority controls orbital traffic globally. The physics of orbital debris create a long-term problem because debris can remain in orbit for decades, depending on altitude. Lower orbits eventually experience atmospheric drag, causing fragments to burn up over time. Higher altitudes can remain contaminated much longer. This means debris generated today can continue threatening spacecraft far into the future. The consequences of severe orbital disruption would extend beyond communications. Weather forecasting would degrade. GPS precision would decline. Air traffic coordination would become more difficult. Maritime navigation systems would face disruptions. Military early warning systems could lose coverage. Financial timing networks could experience synchronization failures. Modern infrastructure depends on precise global coordination, and much of that coordination now relies on satellites operating silently above Earth. The phrase "silent skies" reflects the nature of the threat itself. Orbital systems operate quietly and invisibly in the background of daily life. Most people never think about the satellites supporting navigation, internet access, logistics, or communications. Yet the stability of these systems depends on maintaining a usable orbital environment. Once debris density crosses certain thresholds, recovery becomes increasingly difficult. The most important factor is prevention. Avoiding large-scale debris generation is significantly easier than removing debris afterward. Responsible launch practices, improved satellite disposal systems, collision avoidance coordination, and stricter debris mitigation standards all reduce long-term risk. The challenge is that commercial competition and rapid technological expansion are accelerating faster than global regulatory systems can adapt. Space is no longer a distant frontier disconnected from life on Earth. It has become an extension of global infrastructure. Communications, finance, transportation, defense, and emergency response systems increasingly rely on uninterrupted orbital operations. Protecting that environment is no longer only a scientific issue. It is an economic and geopolitical necessity. A single collision would not end the internet overnight. But the wrong collision in the wrong orbital region could begin a chain reaction capable of reshaping global communications for decades. The risk grows gradually, collision by collision, fragment by fragment, in a system where velocity magnifies even the smallest mistake into a potentially global consequence. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the forces shaping our future, be sure to explore our other documentaries examining the technologies redefining modern civilization. And if you want to keep exploring the biggest questions about science, power, and the future of humanity, make sure to subscribe to the channel and join us for the next journey into the unknown.